You're listening to the Deadly Uncle Podcast,
a safe space for deadly uncle conversations. All right, everybody, on today's episode, we have Tony TooToosis.
Yes, and he's also known as Tony Toosick. This man actually found a better life for himself when he got back into his dancing and music.
That's right. He is a rapper, a beat maker, and he's also the founder and organizer of the Four Winds Market and Showcase based in Calgary, Alberta.
Yes, it's going to be spreading and getting bigger and bigger. This year, he hooked up with Chinook Blast, also in with the city of Calgary.
That's right. So stick around. You're not going to want to miss more with Tony Toosick.
Yeah, so I'm Cree from Palmaker, Saskatchewan. Toosick is my artist name. My last name is TooToosis, so that's kind of how I came about with that name. Just kind of friends gave me that name growing up, nickname that kind of I adopted throughout my early adult life. I actually started music as a guitar player. A lot of people don't know that about me. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, my mom bought me a guitar from a pawn shop because I had a friend who played, and that's where I kind of started writing songs and things like that. Before I was Tony Toosick, and when I was maybe like 18, 19, I actually used to go to bars and stuff like that and play in bars. I've busked before.
Really?
Stuff like that, yeah. But I've just kind of that's always been my thing, just singing music, and got into audio engineering, making beats and doing stuff like that around 20 years old. And then kind of everything evolved, having a studio in my house all the time. I was able to speak my own story, and yeah, that's how it all just kind of evolved from one thing after another.
Nice. So tell us a little bit, I seen from some of your posts there that, dancing has re-entered your life, and, a little bit of your road to, finding the drum and finding dancing again. Tell us a bit about how that all came about.
Yeah, so from when I couldn't even walk, my mom says I was dancing at a very young age, like as young as how my daughter is now. And, for about first 14, 15 years of my life, that's all I needed. The powwow trail with my mom, everything like that. Didn't have a father growing up. I didn't have a father growing up, so that was like something that me and my mother had. Just us, we were on the powwow trail all summer long and gigs around the city and stuff like that. But I got pushed away from it from bullying in high school. I had long braids. I had braids down to my hips, and I got bullied for it from other kids. So I went to Prince Charles Elementary. It's like an Aboriginal school here, and then they didn't have funding past grade 4. The Sherbrooke school had just shut down at that time. So I had to go to just regular public school. And that's where things started to change for me. I started noticing teachers were treating me different. I didn't have Indigenous teachers. And, the kids were different. The older classes kind of picked on me and things like that. As I got into junior high, I started kind of pushing myself away from it. Just, I did perform at my school a couple times, and that's where ultimately I got bullied the most after, right? Mm-hmm. And it just got to the point where I cut my braid off, and it pushed me away, and I started kind of hanging out with the cool kids, and the rest kind of just one thing led after another, and that pushed me away from my culture for, close to 15 years. Mm-hmm. It took me away from my family. I went down some pretty dark roads, some pretty dark stories, substance abuse, gang violence, and things like that. Mm-hmm. Within the last, when you get, a cycle can repeat itself so many times before you get sick of it, or you realize you have to make a self change, right? Mm-hmm. That's where it all comes from, yourself first, to break those cycles. So I found out I was having my daughter. I found out my wife was pregnant, and that's when I was like, the real change needed to happen, right? So I went to school for audio engineering, graduated like around that time when we started planning it all out, right? Mm-hmm. And had my daughter, kind of separated from everything like that. And then how I got brought back to the powwow circle is a cool story, actually. For years before I actually started dancing again, I was having dreams about it.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, I never really shared that with anybody, but I was having dreams. I was dancing like all the time. And I was like, that was something. And then just felt like my spirit was being called back, right? Something I missed all those years. And I took my daughter to Thunderchild, Saskatchewan to go meet my cookum and to the powwow there, take her to the first powwow. And I couldn't go around my family without them being like, oh my God, here's an outfit, try it on. And so I tried it on just to surprise my kukum, my mom and everybody. And of course they're all crying. They haven't seen me dance in 15 years. I think I was like one of the last males. Like I have a couple cousins and nephews that are really young now that dance. Mm-hmm. But there was a big gap where there wasn't any male influence in our family, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so I was the last one, and I stopped dancing. So for those 15 years, really missed that, right? And yeah, that was like basically I walked my first grand entry. I danced that whole weekend, and they sent me home with the regalia and a roach, and I still had all my old feathers from before, and then so the rest was that. Yeah, and I've been dancing every weekend, a new chance I get now since.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing because, like, you know, I think it's a huge part of who we are. And, you know, how did you decide, or who decided that you were a grass dancer?
My mom.
Okay.
Yeah, my mom decided that, I think. Okay. I believe so anyways. Like, so when I was younger, like, my mom's never danced powwow in her life. She makes regalia, she goes to powwows her whole life. My mom actually a fluent Cree speaker.
Okay.
And, you know, so she was teaching us Cree and things like that. That's another thing that actually, when I lost my dance, I lost my language too. I can still understand, but I was learning. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, people say that, like, my mom taught me everything I knew when I was a kid. And even now I remember my mom, like, she'd be on the sidelines telling me, hold your arms up higher, or move your head more, and things like that, right? So because awesome. I didn't have that male influence, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have a male grass dancer gift me the dance as a kid, you know? And so ultimately, like, my mother had to make those decisions and those choices for me at a young age. And yeah, that's what it's been my whole life. And when I came back, I was definitely a grass dancer, right? Like, that's what I wanted. But I'm looking at switching it up next year too.
Oh, what? Well, what's are you letting something out here today, or what?
Oh, well, next year I want to try some chicken dance. I always wanted to dance chicken as a kid, yeah.
Wow.
So, like, my mom didn't make bustles and things like that growing up, so we didn't have the money to buy a bustle.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to dance chicken or fancy when I was younger. Mm-hmm. Now that I'm older and I'm, like, living in Blackfoot country now as a Cree man, you know?
Yeah.
You gotta pick something up, right? Take it.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, for sure. And, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, you said you started playing music, you were a guitar player.
Yeah.
When did you start doing hip hop? And, like, did your entry into hip hop kind of, like, correlate with your dark path? I'm only asking because, like, hip hop has, like, people see it sometimes in a negative light, right?
Yeah.
Because it's about street life and street culture. But did that all kind of, like, morph together for you? Is that how you kind of moved into it?
So, like, when I think back to even, like, my first experiences with hip hop music, it takes me back to, like, 124th and 118th, like Inglewood area. That's where I grew up. Mm-hmm. And just kind of being around with, like, you know, the little hoodlums and some of the kids that grew up in that area. You know, we stayed out late and did things like that. But that was, like, where I remember my first time sitting with people just, like, freestyle rapping and things like that. So, yeah, I would say, like, you know, if you're familiar with the area, and especially back in, like, early 2000s, like, late 90s, it wasn't the nicest area, right?
Yeah.
But, yeah, those would be, like, my first experience with that. So as I could remember back to 8 years old, 10 years old, even with that, like,
yeah,
just sitting out there, you know, shooting dice, playing with, you know, like, and rapping with some of the neighborhood, like, native kids, right? Like, that's how it was. And the older kids. So my older brother is actually 5 years older than me.
Yeah. So
he would be a lot of the influence that I have in, like, a lot of the things that I do now. So my brother struggles with substance abuse, well, alcoholism and things like that now. But prior to that, you know, like, he skateboarded, he rapped, he breakdance, he danced powwow, he did all those things that I actually do now. So it's cool, and like, you know, I pray for my brother every day, love the guy. You know, sometimes we don't get along, but a lot of the things that, like, I do now are, like, reflections of what he kind of passed on to me as a younger kid, because that was my male influence role model, right? Growing up.
Yeah, a lot of times I think that's how it is when, you know, your father's not so much in your life. It's your older uncles, it's your, you know, it's like the tribe taking care of you, you know, and that's how it was in our older days, you know. So I can see why, you know, you took influence on your older brother.
Oh yeah,
in that sense, you know. So I just wanted to ask you too about, you know, you got a little bit of a injury on your hand there.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about how that happened?
So I'm telling people it's skateboarding.
So can we get the truth though here today?
Yeah, okay, I'll give you the truth, because I could tell you knew it wasn't skateboarding when I walked in the door. So I was performing actually at a music festival. I'm not gonna name any names or anything.
Yeah.
I was invited out to a music festival. And so how these things work is, these organizers put on the festival, and they'll contract out stages. They contract out PA guys and things like that. So they contracted out an external sound guy. So I'll just add that in there. It wasn't anything to do with the festival. It was all a big misunderstanding at the end of the day. But drove 5 hours to be out at this festival, and as I had a really cool idea to walk around and find Indigenous women and have red handprints put onto my clothing, because I didn't have an outfit to wear.
Yeah.
I was like struggling. I was, I'm going to wear all black. I'll find women, and then what I'm going to do is just speak about the Highway of Tears and things like that, and bring awareness, right? That's kind of what I've shifted a lot of my platform towards. And I'm scheduled to be on stage for like 30 minutes, right? And I'm scheduled from 6:50 to 7:20. I get on stage at like 7:15. Because you know how these things go.
Yeah, everything's running behind or whatever.
Yeah, so I get on stage and I'm like, I have exactly 30 minutes set, constructed, like rehearsed, everything like that, right? And I let them know, I'm like, cool, like this is the time I'm gonna be off here. So I'm performing, I'm on stage for about five minutes, and then I start speaking about the red handprints, and like I start, speaking about that, and then, I had some guy come up and unplug my mic and tell me it's time to get off stage. I was like, what? And I was like, are you gonna like let me finish speaking and perform at least one last song for them? And he was like, no, like you're done, right? And so the issue that I had was that I was actually invited out there by the landowners for this music festival.
Okay.
It's on Indigenous land, like it's on a reserve. I'm not gonna say any names of where it is or give it away or anything like that, but I was invited out by the family that owns the land. They wanted some sort of Indigenous representation at this music festival, right? So,
well, you can tell us once the cameras stop.
Yeah. No, I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't do anything like that. I'm not in trouble or anything. So, I performed my last song. I gave them just one of my most hype songs. I gave a really good performance. I gave my speech. I said what I needed to say, like talking about, land back and things like that. Just let them know that they're on Indigenous land, and that I felt disrespected about them. It was just bad timing. You know what I mean? Yeah. The guy cut me off one song later. It wouldn't have meant so much to me, but it was just in that moment. Yeah. And with the adrenaline, and the song that I played was more of a mosh pit kind of style. So I was in the crowd, like jumping with people. And I said what I needed to say. I walked off the stage, and with the adrenaline, I ended up hitting a fence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
so I do have, that's one thing that I'm struggling with right now. And so being in a place there's a lot of alcohol there. Mm-hmm. And there was people, like substance around everywhere. I'm 9 months sober actually today.
Right on.
Checked out the calendar. Yeah. But so just being in that environment, they were offering me drinks. I was like, I don't drink. One thing kind of led to another. They didn't have food for me. They had drinks instead. A lot of people, it was triggering for me.
Yeah.
I was already, and then I got onto the stage when I was trying to say what I needed to say, and people were listening, and people were booing the guy and things like that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, just in the heat of the moment, and that's something that I need to take care of. But it's just in the heat of the moment. I don't know. I punched what I thought was a fence, and it was actually a tree trunk.
Ooh.
Ouch. I don't have the pictures on here, but basically these bones popped all the way back here.
Yeah.
Oh man!
I didn't break anything. The doctor said it was a 1 in a million chance.
Wow!
Didn't fracture anything like that. They just popped out. So the festival drove me over to the hospital, popped it back in place, and then I was back there.
My dad's got a lump on his hand permanently from punching not a fence. Because he wasn't smart enough to go to the hospital after, but
yeah.
Well, it's like I was like kind of mad at myself. I was down on myself about the whole thing. I was self-inflicted. There's one thing that I'm really trying to. I don't go out and just like hit stuff or do anything like that anymore. When I was younger, I was very angry.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I stepped away from alcohol was that I got emotional, and it was triggering for me. And I can't control myself when I get angry, and especially alcohol didn't make it any better.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want that for myself anymore. And so I was down on myself. And then one thing that my wife, my partner said was that, I'm proud of you because, 5 years ago, you probably would have hit somebody else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you would have hit somebody, and it would have been a bigger deal. And I kind of just hit it, and I walked away. I was walking to the car, and then I looked at my hand. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, that is.
So you stopped drinking 9 months ago, and you've been obviously performing in places where there's alcohol around.
Yeah.
As somebody who, like, I quit drinking 3 years ago, and it was tough for me to go back and perform. Like, I grew up as a bar entertainer, right? Like, I played in bars all the time. There was always booze around. And it was hard for me when I first quit because I wouldn't go play for a while. Like, I wouldn't. People would call me for a gig, and I'd say, "No, I don't want to. I don't want to come out. Like, I don't want to be around alcohol right now. Like, I wasn't ready." So, is that something that you went through, and how did you work through that? Or are you still working through it? Like,
still working through it every day. So I work, like, what I do for work is I'm an audio engineer as well. I record music for people, primarily hip hop music. So in saying that, those sessions, a lot of the guys come in, friends, my clients, things like that. They'll come in with a bottle of liquor. And so from when I had my daughter, I knew that I wanted to quit. I wanted to quit drinking for sure. And, but that was something I struggled with from, the whole pregnancy, pretty close to like her first birthday. I wasn't drinking all the time, an alcoholic. I never in my life kept beer in the fridge, go home, drink or anything like that. But when I'm sitting at the studio and I'm recording music and someone has a bottle of Hennessy or some beer or something, they're like, yo, turn up with me, and I'm the engineer. And I was, I guess, just quick to give in to the temptation all the time. And even if I didn't want to, I'd always find myself one or two. And then it just got to a point where I was just sick of that every time. I'm like, I'm here to work, and I used to go out, party, all that stuff, right? But yeah, I just took it step by step. You know what I mean? Like, in the studio, I knew that was the first step.
yeah.
I couldn't drink liquor, come home anymore, be tired, and not hold my baby anymore. Because that's what it was getting to a point. Whereas, I got home from the studio at midnight, and I've been drinking, and my baby's still awake, but I'm like too drunk or tired to do anything with the family. So, yeah, I cut that out, and then, it took a long time. It took about a year almost to actually fully stop. Like, it'd be, I'm not trying to drink, and then I'd give in. Yeah. And things like that, or, and then going to shows. So I had my first couple shows, and it was actually Halloween 2021. So last year, Halloween, and I was really trying to quit, but it was my first time getting a performance gig away from my daughter with a babysitter. That was in a club or anything like that, right? And I was like a last minute headliner, and I just decided I'd never performed sober in my life, like as Tony Toosick or as Toosick music, right? Yeah. So I just
kind of freaky.
Yeah.
At first,
I put the goal in mind, and I was like, you know what? I came here to have fun. I'm gonna have a couple drinks tonight, but I'm gonna have a couple drinks after I perform and see how that goes, and see if I can hold off to that temptation. A room full of people, everything like that, and it worked. And I performed. I had one drink, and I wasn't even drunk, tipsy. I caught a cab, went home to my daughter. Talked to grandma about how the night was. She was a babysitter that night, and it felt good. And so that's when I knew I had to quit. And so I quit that day, and then I messed up and had a drink on Christmas, and then I was like, why did I even have a drink on Christmas? And then I just that was it for me. So actually, Christmas Day is
That's cool.
is the day I quit.
Right.
The last beer I had, and I only had one.
Yeah, no, I feel that, and even with what's your stance on your regalia, around situations with alcohol and festivals and those type of things. That's one of the questions that a lot of artists and people in the community have with our outfits, right? Should we have them? Because what's the difference between North Country Fair and the River Cree for a big Treaty 7 or Treaty 6
Calgary
gala,
Stampede or anything like that.
I was going to say a whole lot of hallucinogenic drugs,
but you know what I mean? When you're talking about alcohol,
for sure.
Yeah, I know. I get you on that.
I've been to North Country Fair.
There might be some acid there. There might be some other stuff. Yes, there might be some crazy stuff. But for the alcohol part. Like,
Yeah.
I really don't think that there is much of a difference between like a festival and then a big corporate event where they're paying us huge money, right?
Yeah.
So, what's your stats on all that? How do you feel about that?
So just like, and how I've always been taught, there's no place for alcohol in the circle at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like that's just always how it's been for me. I've never even, coming back and seeing that there is some of that going on, or even going out to the powwows and you see, like, you hear stories, I guess, as you hear things, and I'm kind of like, that things have really changed in a sense, and yeah, like it's tough to see for sure. And I don't support that at all.
So like outfits, right? Like outfits around
that kind of stuff. Yeah. And like even for me too, like I've done gigs before, like, so I've done music festivals where I've been invited out and I go out and dance and I'm like sitting there and I'm like, I actually leave my eagle feathers in the car as opposed to actually bringing them out. And I'm actually considering having a whole separate regalia made that I actually only use for those type of situations.
I have a drum for that.
Yeah, it's like same thing. It's like I wouldn't want to bring like something that I actually like that's very sacred to me. I would make it myself and kind of do it that way. But yeah, trying to find ways, I guess, to adapt into like modern day society as an Indigenous person and a dancer too, and still because there's always, like you said, there's the right and the wrong ways, but there's also we still have to adapt in certain ways too, right? But like with substance and things like that, it's tough. It's a tough one, right?
It is. It is. It's a tough situation, especially when, a lot of these, like if you're talking about the hugest meetings in Treaty 7, or sorry, not Treaty 6, I keep saying Treaty 7, in Treaty 6, Treaty 7, around Canada, those huge meetings where, they have all of our leaders there, there's usually alcohol inside those dinners and where we're performing and stuff. So it's a really it's an interesting position. I know a lot of dancers that will not dance, or like you said, come up with a whole different regalia that is not traditional, right, for these situations, because we're in a different world, right?
And I've had that too, where I've like come out to like community events or something and I'm booked by like a non-Indigenous company. And I get there and I don't know what's going on, and like they want me to come out and speak and perform my music, and then by chance we saw you dance, can you dance as well? And sure, yeah. And then we get there and there's alcohol and I'm like, you know what I mean? Like and I think it's just lack of education too and lack of knowledge for like the non-Indigenous community. They don't realize that these certain things are acceptable in our circle, right? And so it's just we need to get out there more, like voice up more and educate some more.
So being, I got to ask this question. It's a real question. Being a dancer and being not from Treaty 7 and, being in a performing artist, situation, how have you felt, welcomed in Treaty 7, and have you struggled, getting into the scene over there?
No comment.
It's a real question. No comment.
No, I'm definitely, I've had my ups and downs, for sure.
That's awesome.
Definitely voiced some of them. No, actually, like, first of all, I just want to say I'm, like, very grateful to be able to do what I do in Treaty 7 territory. And, they've actually, for the most part, been very welcoming.
Yeah.
And as a Cree man, I don't think a lot of them even realize I'm Cree until no, I'm just kidding. No, I think a lot of it, what it is too, is I get a lot of like respect and attention from the younger community. Like younger generation really looks up to what I do and really helping pave the way and set example for them, right? And so I've gotten a lot of like love and appreciation from that. And then as a dancer, and I guess just things like that, I have had my difficulties before where it's some of the people, I guess, are kind of stuck in the ways where it's like, well, they want to show Blackfoot representation, or they want to show like specifically only Treaty 7 representation. I've definitely voiced up how I feel about that. I've been in Treaty 7 for a long time. I was born and raised here in Edmonton, but I moved out there in my adult life to actually get away from that, the lifestyles that I was living here and things like that. So kind of like, help build up a community there and what I do and everything like that. And so I believe that I'm important to the scene and, to the generation and things like that. And so that my story can really help a lot of people, a lot of younger people. And I always make a point that like what I do it's not for me. I don't do things for money. I don't do it for clout and for the fame, because if I was to push that route, I would have been doing it. But I prefer the longer route. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because
the community route. Yeah.
I prefer that like 100% now. You know what I mean?
And I think it's important to remember for everybody too that in these urban centers, I mean, there's Indigenous people from all across Canada that live there.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have just as much right to be representing Cree people in that community as they do have people representing Blackfoot culture. I know it's their traditional territory, but there's a lot of Cree people that live in Calgary, a lot of Soto people. So it's like we need to, I think as a community, we need to drop those barriers a little more and just be more accepting of everybody that lives in our area,
for sure. I mean, I speak a lot about it, like with lateral violence and things like that. I really believe that we are stronger together as one nation or as like one community, right? And, there's tribes and everybody needs to be educated, and there's so much to learn about Indigenous culture, but for us to really thrive in like urban culture or like modern day society, we need to stick together primarily.
We need to support each other's businesses. Like today at TP Treats, they had an event, people were there. That's what we need to do as Indigenous people: support our businesses, support our artists, lift each other up. That's important.
Create opportunities for each other, and and that's another thing. Like even with doing something like the screening I did, it created some opportunities that had nothing to do with me and had nothing to do with the screening, but it had to do with the community getting together and coming up with ideas. Which is amazing. That's what we're doing. That's why we do these things. And and if we were selfish with those things, it wouldn't get as big. And we all need to stick together for sure.
And we're all connected to this land in some way or another. So like even going back into my family tree. So yes, I'm Cree. I'm from Treaty 6. I'm from Pawmaker, Saskatchewan, but Pawmaker was actually adopted by the Crowfoot family. Like he lived in Siksika. He was actually buried at Blackfoot Crossing until 2016. And so a lot of that too was like when I was getting these opportunities, I was speaking up on that. Like I'm representing that history, that like my ancestor as a TooToosis man, like yellow mud blanket, first TooToosis family member ever. That was Pawmaker's brother. And so
that's your family.
That's family. I have family ties to that, and then my family has ties to. So Pawmaker wouldn't be the man. He wouldn't be without, the life that he lived in Blackfoot country. And so I wanted to represent that and speak on that. And I don't think my voice was heard on that. It was more of you're Cree from Treaty 6, and I've lost a couple opportunities from it. And I voiced it up, and I've gained more from it. I've reached the ears of the right people, and just trying to help make that change for other people, because I've seen other stories. It wasn't just me, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't just personal. It was to help speak up for the voices of other people that it was happening to as well. And I think I helped a little bit, if I can leave a footprint in any way, then that's what I'm here for, right?
No, I've myself experience over in Treaty 7, very welcoming as well. It takes a lot longer to get welcomed into the scene over there. I think even as a person from there, because it's surrounded by the 3 different very strong tribes around the center of Calgary. So it's just a little tougher to get in there. I find it, and I've spoke to a lot of other people that said that the scene, that the Edmonton scene was a little easier to get into and get accepted into. It just takes a little longer. It's a different space. There's different tribes surrounding it, but all positivity to it. I've been lucky to be accepted over there and to do some things.
They're just greedy with that beautiful land.
What's that?
I said they're just greedy with that beautiful land. The land is amazing.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Some of the most beautiful land, Treaty 7.
Definitely. So tell us about, how did you come up with the idea of your Indigenous markets and all these things that you've been throwing on?
So I guess pre-COVID, I had a promotion company where I used to go out to nightclubs and, host my own events. hip hop events, things like that, put on local talent. And then after COVID, you know, obviously COVID took a lot of that away from me. I couldn't do it anymore. And then I kind of changed my whole lifestyle. Once shows kind of started going up again and there was, you know, things happening again, I was kind of sitting around waiting for the bookings to happen or people to look out to me. So like during COVID, I was probably one of the only artists in my community putting music out because I could record at home.
Yeah.
And I was friends with all the guys that do my media, so it was easy to do. We didn't care about the restrictions, you know, we just did it. And so I was kind of waiting around and nothing really happened. You know, I'd missed out on a bunch of like local stuff that was going on. People were kind of overseeing me. But at the same time, I'm producing and bringing to life all these other artists and I'm watching them kind of just overstep me. Like the new generation come in, I'm producing their music for me and then I kind of just out with the old, in with the new was kind of how it felt for me. And I was like, but then it also felt like as soon as I started speaking up for my Indigenous people and doing things like that, I started losing those opportunities. Like there was a pattern, there was something to it. You know, it's like, I'm not drinking anymore, I'm doing this, I'm speaking out about this, and then suddenly I'm not on stage with these big names in the nightclubs anymore. I didn't know what it was really. It's hard to target it for me, like specifically what it was, but I just noticed a lack of opportunity. And then I started speaking to some of my some people I looked up to, like Jesus became a really good friend of mine. And, you know, he'd been around the Calgary scene for a while. And he had said some of the same things to me. He's like, you know, like there was a lack of opportunity for Indigenous artists, like events and things like that, right? For him to come up, and he would advise me to kind of get out. He's like, you know, just go out. You're an Indigenous artist and speak for the community. Do bigger than just Calgary. You know what I mean? Like get out there and speak to everybody that in our community. And so that really like motivated me to create opportunity within Calgary, you know? And just, that's how it kind of came together. Was I didn't have a stage for myself, so I just kind of created a stage, but I'm not the type of person to create something for myself. So if you were at my first event, I didn't even perform. I performed one song at the end of the hip hop event and everything, but I created the whole stage for everybody else. Going out and, you know, meeting you and meeting Lena and Ashley Ghostkeeper and artists like that. I was like, this needs to be brought to Calgary. Like, we need to do this here. I Am Collective was a very big inspiration for that. Shout out to I Am Collective.
Yeah, for sure. What would be really cool, and I'm going to put this out there for when this is put out there, is to see I Am Collective and Authentically Indigenous come together and throw on a super event. You know what I mean? Because they're both the superpowers of each city. You know what I mean? So for them to come together and throw on something together, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I actually met the people with Authentically Indigenous at the awards ceremony that I attended last week. And they had said the same thing. Like, you know, I hadn't reached out to them because, I didn't really know them, right? I hadn't reached out. I didn't know how some people view things. Like, are we competitors or like, what are we, right? You see us now. We've done a couple things, and they saw me and they approached me when I was at the event and they said, hey, like, we saw your event. We wanted to come out and network with you and meet you. And it's nice to see you. And we didn't know who you were, right? And I was like, very cool. And we talked about the same thing. Like, you know, they're very open, very welcoming. Because if you go onto their page too, like, they share all their vendors on their page. And so it's not like they're holding anything back. Like, they'll have emails, contact information for everybody. Like, and so.
No, what it is, and this is what I was talking to, my good buddy Malreen, big shout out to you for throwing on all these events and doing this wonderful work, was that they have the ground, you know, there. They have they've been doing it. They're sturdy in the ground with what they have been doing, and they're successful with that. But what would make it even bigger is to hook up with somebody that's in a younger generation that's hooked up with TikTok and has you know, these ideas of having TikTok appearances and all these different things that, you know, we might not think of as an older generation. You know, so connecting with somebody that's younger is always important for new events and things that are happening. So I really hope to see that you guys work together in the future and build something amazing, for sure.
For sure. Coming soon, for sure.
For sure. And hire me as an entertainer, eh?
I'm playing too, eh?
He does.
For a pack of smokes and some
I still don't smoke.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be money. Eh?
But we did see that. We just recently went to Ontario to do the Contact on Tour showcases. We sat in on a few like roundtable discussions, and that's what's missing from a lot of arts organizations is getting youth involved to help them promote their organizations. You have to somehow bring younger people to your events, so you got to get a younger eye to try and get them in the door, because the older people that run these organizations don't understand the new social media, and they're totally open about that. They have no idea how it works.
Yeah.
But
We're part of that.
Yeah, we are. Like, we're totally part of that. Because we learned, they're like, well, if you want the under 30s, and then they're like, we know how to get the 50 to whatever. And we're like, what about like the 40-year-olds? Like, who's trying to get us going there? Because we're kind of halfway in between. We don't really understand TikTok, but you can reach us on Facebook.
Yeah, and Facebook is for old people. Young people say, right? So
not like a generation. When I was a kid, we didn't have that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So even for me, like when it first started coming out, like I hated it.
Yeah.
I didn't like going on my phone all the time. Even now, if you text me or message me on Facebook, do I reply? Like,
it takes a while.
It takes a while, yeah. And it's just for the fact that, like, as a kid, like that wasn't the way. Like, you call or text. Like, not even text me. Don't text me.
You call.
You call me. Like, that's how we talk, right?
Yeah.
And it's. I'm in the middle too, in a sense, where it's like it's
but
not
you understand what's happening.
Oh yeah, I know how to use it. I've kind of gained.
So
I've gained my head around that. Like that's how the world works now.
Yeah.
And then my wife is really good with that too. Like she keeps me organized. And I was looking for management and like people that help me with that kind of stuff, and it's hard to depend on other people.
Yeah.
And
I think that's a great team.
You always depend on the mother of your child, right?
Yeah.
Your life partner and so.
I think that's a good team.
Big shout out to her.
Yeah, because she's not on stage with you. Yeah. She has a different job. Yeah. You know, it's tough if you're on stage together, you're doing this together and that together. She has a slightly different job, but still is connected to your career. So
and I'm very grateful to be able to actually support my family off of what I do for this whole year.
Yeah.
Since January, I haven't worked. I actually recorded people this year.
Yeah,
I've just been performing and speaking and doing things like that. And she's been debating getting a job to do that, but with childcare and things like that.
Yeah.
If we're able to do it, let's do it, right?
Yeah.
Man.
So she helped me a lot with that.
That's true. I believe that is true freedom, you know, is doing what you love to do. And,
Absolutely.
you know, and it's, you know, I have one more, you know, before we, you know, it's been awesome to talk to you here today.
Great to meet you.
You know, and I have one more project that I'm doing that I'd like to ask you about, in fact, and it's kind of a biggie. Little last question.
We'll save the little ones for last.
I got a new documentary that I'm working on, and it's called In the Name of Father, Son, Grandmother, Moon. And it's talking about religion and how it's divided, you know, certain people in communities. Like, for example, my community, there's the born-again people, there's the Anglos, and then there's the traditional styles. So, you know, they don't always get along and stuff. So I want to do a documentary on basically religion and stuff like that. So I just want to know, what's your stance on, you know, what do you believe in? Do you believe in the traditional way? What's your path, and what's your experience with religion?
I believe in myself. No, I'm just kidding.
That's good. I like that one.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's Tom Cruise, Scientology.
No, like I believe in the Creator. You know, like when I pray to the Creator. It's like it's tough for me because growing up, like my grandmother was like, she went to residential school and she pushed Catholic religion on us, and you know, like going to school and signing up for public school. I remember my mom checking, oh, you're Roman Catholic. I'm like, what? Right? That was one of the things back then, and never really understood why we went to church on Christmas and things like that. And my mom was like, you know, my mom's not Catholic, but that's how my cookum was, right? Growing up. So it's really tough for me. And I think like even now, especially for her, like it's something that she grew up believing in. And, yeah, it's a really tough one for me. Like I believe in our traditional ways, and there's so much I need to learn. Like I've disconnected and I've stepped away for so long that, you know, there's certain ceremony and things like that I'm looking forward to learning and, you know, attending in the future coming up. But yeah, just finding who I am really as a person and finding what it is. It's a tough one, right? Like,
how did you feel when you were like a young child inside the church? What was your feelings inside the church? Confusion. I always, because I grew up on the powwow trail. You know what I mean? Like, I grew up hearing about things, and I always like to believe that I was a lot more mature than a lot of the other kids around me, because even now I remember thinking things that, like, you know, they made sense to me then. You know what I mean? And just, you know, being like a single mother and living a life in poverty, inner city, things like that, right? You're exposed to a lot more. So, but yeah, I always just remember feeling confused. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, hearing things about residential schools. I've been hearing about this stuff since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I always remember that word assimilation in social studies growing up was always a traumatizing word, because I would have to say things like this to my teachers, and they would say, well, no, like, this is, we saved you guys, kind of thing. Like, that's how it was, right?
Yeah.
That's the sense that you would get, right?
I'm lucky I never had a teacher say that to me.
I'm not even kidding. The reason why that's in my head is because that was the vibe that I got. Like, I was like, no, like, we saved the native people. Like,
you guys were like starving. You were wild. Even that, you know, that's funny, because a lot of elders are saying we got to get rid of that word wild. There's nothing wild.
Yeah.
There is nothing wild.
No.
It's just what animals are. It's just what humans are. That whole wild thing is a colonial way of thinking about animals.
Yeah.
Is a colonial way of thinking about tribes. That whole wild thing should be done away with. So it's interesting how even in our conversations, in our language, we're changing how we describe things. You know. So, but yeah. So that's I think that's basically, you know, where we're at. And just one more thing, talk to us about your Changemakers Award and what you have going on for the upcoming future.
Oh, cool. So, big shout out to USAY, New Tribe Magazine. I was nominated for the Changemaker Award, which I received this past week. I was nominated by Sissy. She nominated me for what I do with the Four Winds event, and just kind of bringing the community together in Treaty 7, and how I'm trying to help create other opportunity for people out there. It was really cool because she nominated me for the reasons of what she sees. And then she actually stayed at my house that night and got to actually hear a really in-depth version of my story from, like, going through the streets and stuff like that, which I will be talking about more. We're voicing out things like that, but she was like, I had no idea about you like that, you know what I mean? Like, she's seen me as a influencer and things like that, but she doesn't know the real story. You know, I'm talking about struggles, you know, going through the system, and at a young age, like going through the jail system and things like that, right? Fighting my struggles through that. But yeah, so I like to believe that, like, the change that I've really made is for myself. Like, the self change that I've made has really impacted others, right? I wouldn't be able to speak or do what I do without that self change. I'd really be a toxic person still, or not even toxic person, but just I wouldn't be the role model that I believe I am today. And so that award really just made me proud of myself, because, you know, like, just knowing my story and hearing what other people had to say about me and what other people had to think about me, it was really uplifted my spirit, and definitely, like, motivated me to release some of the new music I have coming out. Currently working on a couple events right now. Four Winds will be looking to do something here November 11th and 12th coming up shortly.
Cool.
Yeah, so just organizing that out. I won't release any of the juicy details yet till it's finalized, but look out for that. And then March, we're planning out our March one as well already.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
It's my birthday in March. So.
Yeah, mine as well.
Yeah. We have a band together, me and him, so we'll have to come out with a full band maybe to the show. Yeah.
No, I'm looking for more entertainment. So
yeah.
talk.
Because I've always done like just an acoustic thing with you, but I have a full band and it sounds different. Yeah, so it's pretty cool, pretty hype.
Yeah, for sure.
I know we wanted to do that before, but go ahead.
I was gonna say it's good to hear you say that you're proud of yourself.
Yeah,
that's an important thing for Indigenous men to be able to say. You know, like, a lot of us have never said that before.
Yeah,
you know, because we've been taught not to be.
Yeah.
So it's important for you to say that, and I'm glad you did.
For sure. Thank you. Yeah. I'm, like, very grateful for the opportunity that I've been given to do what I do. You know, like, with a lot of the lateral violence, it's not easy for Indigenous people to even break those cycles and break those barriers of becoming where they are. Some of the people I look up to face a lot of that and a lot of those struggles, and you know what I mean? Like, I speak on a lot of, like, I'm not the same person that I used to be. I'm not the same person I was yesterday. Every single day I'm trying my best to make those self changes.
Yeah.
And I've just gotten to a point where, like, I know I've always had good intention, but I've really just cycled out the good and the bad, and I know what I want. Like, I do it all for my family, and I do it all for, like, the people, the community, right? I want to see my Indigenous people shine, and I want to see more people like me in the future. When I'm older, I picture there being, like, you know, a bunch of young Indigenous influencers, hip-hop artists doing and speaking just like I did, and some of the people that I look up to, right?
Wonderful. Well, thanks for coming on, man, and we look forward to seeing what you have in store for the future. And this is what this podcast is about, is celebrating men's achievements, celebrating boys' achievements, and you know, you being in programs and knowing this, there's not very many programs for men or boys.
Yeah.
And so this is what this podcast is for, is to celebrate, you know, our achievements as brothers and as men. So congratulations on everything you've done, and
for sure.
thank you for coming on.
Sweet. Thank you guys for having me. Want to give a big shout out to Cousin Skateboards, one of my sponsors for skateboarding. They go out to Indigenous communities. They uplift the community through skateboarding and skateboard programs with their mobile skate parks and stuff like that. So it's an honor to be a part of that in Treaty 7, and I'm sure you'll see more of them in the future.
And how can people get a hold of you before we go?
Facebook, Tony Toosick, that's TOOSICK, it's all one word, not two words, or Tony Toosick on Instagram, and then, I'm very approachable. Just send me a message, add me as a friend.
Yeah.
Cool.
He's taken, so.
You're listening to the Deadly Uncle Podcast,
a safe space for deadly uncle conversations.